All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Win Daily Show. My name is Michael Raziel, and I'm here with my man, Sia Najad. Sia, it's 9 o'clock at night. Do you know where your kids are?
I do. The more important question is, where am I going to be at 1:30 in the morning? Michael, am I going to be watching Korean baseball?
Well, no, you're not on the West Coast, man. You're East Coast. It's 4:30 in the morning. Are you going to be
Oh my
watching
God.
Korean baseball at 4:30 in the morning? That's a good
Oh my
question.
God. Only if I get a hot pick, man. I need somebody to kind of spill the beans on what guys to take. I know Dan Straley is over there. That's like the
Yeah.
only player I know.
Aaron Altherr as well. He was a Met, and I think he had like 3 hits and about 100 at bats. So that's my one Korean baseball statistic I have. But again, thank you so much to everybody watching now. This will also be in podcast form in the late evening hours. But Sia and I are here. We got some fun stuff to talk about. We're going to talk a little bit more about Korean baseball. Obviously, the NFL schedule was just released, so we're very excited to chit chat about that a little bit. Some of the lines for week one are out already, and some of just the generalities of sports. Some things are starting to trickle back in. We have some golf to talk about. We know Sia is a very big golf fan, but let's go back to the Korean baseball for a second. I think it is absolutely fantastic that I can wake up. I get up at like 6:15 in the morning. I wake up, I make my cup of coffee, I throw on ESPN2, and it's all these random baseball players I've never seen, no fans in the stands, and Carl Ravish and Eduardo Perez are just telling me about all these random guys that I've never seen. And I never thought I'd do that. I never thought I'd be in a world where that would need to happen, but here we are, and I am so grateful for it. Sia, have you watched any of the games at all yet?
No, and I have a question for you. And by the way, for anybody that's watching, we will get to the NFL schedule, but hold tight because this is an important question actually that I have for you. So they're practicing social distancing out there, so there's no fans. Is that what you're telling me?
Correct. No fans in the
Okay.
stands.
So now you have watched a baseball game, granted with people you generally don't know, and there's been no fans in the stadium. Like, are the announcers sort of holding their own and almost distracting you from that, or like,
So
what's the feeling?
yeah, so you're from Florida, right?
Yes. Well, I'm
So
from DC, but I live in South
okay,
Florida now,
you live in South Florida, so you have seen a Tampa Bay Rays game before
and a Marlins game.
and a
Yes.
Marlins game, so you know exactly what it's like. You barely even notice there's just not Marlins man sitting behind the stands, honestly, and I do mean that in a mean way, but also in a literal way that you really can't tell. I mean, yeah, there's usually crowd noise here and there, but honestly, it's like watching a Tampa Bay Rays and Toronto Blue Jays game. I don't know any who half of the players are. I know some of them because they're kind of old. And yeah, that's about it. It's about the same amount.
So, Michael, I have one more question about Korean baseball for you. So, you are a true baseball fan. You always have been, correct?
Love it.
So
Absolutely.
you would be in the category of people that might like subscribe to those unwritten rules, with which the casual baseball fan like myself does not subscribe to. So my understanding in Korean baseball, they do the bat flip. They sort of show off when they hit a home run. Are you pro or you con? You hate it or you love
100% pro. I'm all for it.
it? Love
I
it.
mean, there's certain unwritten rules that I do believe in. Like don't bunt with a no-hitter if you're up by like 3 or 4 runs. Like that there's certain ones. Yeah, there's really no necessity there. But bat flips, dude, have you seen some of these bat flips coming out of the Korean Baseball League? They throw that thing like 10 feet high. They're just whipping them around. They're having a blast, and I love it. Show me emotion, man. That's what I miss about baseball. Like they don't care. They don't let the players be happy. They don't let them show emotion. It's the weirdest thing in the world to me.
And the best way to market yourself is have your superstars show emotion. And in that formula is so easy to understand, and Major League Baseball just refuses to embrace it. I'll tell you what, though, the only bat flip I can remember from an MLB standpoint, correct me if I'm wrong if I got this name wrong, it is Jose Bautista that he used to play for Toronto, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was the most furious bat flip I've ever seen. And if for anybody listening or that's listening on the podcast tomorrow, if you haven't seen that thing, please go to YouTube. It is a celebration and it's freaking awesome.
It is beautiful. And there was actually one more that I really loved this past postseason. Yadier Molina hit a walk-off single, if I'm not mistaken, against the Braves. He takes the bat all the way out. He rounds first base and he just chucks it into right field. The weirdest thing I've ever seen. It's completely unnecessary, very dangerous. But hey, Yadi's going to do what Yadi's going to do. So that's Korean baseball. We really don't know what's going on. We have some guys that are going to be coming on next week to talk about picks and DFS a little bit to hang out. So that way everybody out there can make a little bit of money, because that's what we're here to do at Win Daily. We're here to help you guys make some money. So we're excited about that. But as Sia said, we are going to get to the NFL schedule. Do you want to hit that now, Sia, or you want to talk about golf first maybe? Or what do you want to do?
First of all, so if there was ever sort of a be with somebody in a back alley, kind of like for a fight, Yadier Molina. I mean, that's probably in Major League Baseball, like the Anthony Masons of like the 80s or the Charles Oakleys, those guys that like you did not want to mess with. Is there a better candidate than Yadier Molina in
Off the
Major League
top,
Baseball?
yeah, off the top of my head, probably not. Just like he has that grit too. He's that catcher, so you know he's kind of angry all the time because he's always in a squat, and you know I feel like he's got some torque in his hips. Like off the top of my head, I think that's the guy I'm gonna lean on. So I would have to give you that. But if you gave me a little bit more time, maybe towards the end of the show, if I can think of somebody else that I really wouldn't want to fight in an alley, or I would prefer having back me up, I'll let you know.
So, okay, I'll tell you what, before we get to the NFL, golf, I don't think people sort of know this, but it's really been hot and heavy from both a sports betting and a DraftKings FanDuel standpoint for the last like 4 or 5 weeks. So much so that the actual Outlaw Tour, which is actually showcasing all these events in Arizona, because again, in Arizona, golf courses have been an essential business throughout the pandemic, but they have really upgraded, the Outlaw Tour has upgraded how they show golf. They have like a Periscope feed for a lot of the featured players. You can bet not only pre-flop, in terms of before the tournament, but throughout the tournament, you can bet. They have showdowns in DraftKings and in FanDuel, showdown slates. Well, in DraftKings for sure, showdown slates where every single day there's a new tournament to bet. It's pretty fantastic. And last time we were on here, Michael, I told you that I had taken some random guy as my outright pick, Matt Picanzo. And when we talked last, he was one shot back with 1 day to go. Matt Picanzo won. Sia Nejad has done it again. Stay tuned for my picks next week. It's in Scottsdale, and there's actually some real PGA players that are playing in this one starting in a few days. So stay tuned. Get on at Sia Nejad. Get on at Win Daily Sports. Like, honestly, I mean, I got an outright. We're three tournaments in terms of me betting them. So
dude, let's go. That's what I'm talking about, man. Look at you. And that's why you get paid the big bucks, right? You get paid the big bucks. That's why you look so damn good. So I will tell you, I don't follow anything in the Outlaw Tour. That's why I appreciate you and what you do. And I appreciate that you won some money. How much did you put down? You don't have to tell us how much you won. Out of curiosity, how much did you put down?
I'm so embarrassed at how little I put down. I even think I referenced it last time we were on here. So honestly, I'm not going to say, and usually people don't say because like they won like thousands and like, they just don't want to say it. It was in the low hundreds, and it makes me feel really sad because I got an outright. And when you get an outright, you want to have like 1,500 in the bank at least, or 1,000. And it's nowhere near there. The reality was it was the Outlaw Tour, and I was investing a lot in DraftKings as it was. And I just didn't feel comfortable so here I am, anytime anybody wins, they're always like, well, I should have put more on it. So,
of course, right? Hindsight's always going to be 2020. It is a little frustrating, of course. I wish you put $1 million on that guy because you would have cashed out. But hey, it is what it is. Now, next time, throw a couple, you won this money. Now you're playing with the house, and, we'll see what happens there. So I do love it. And I will say one last thing about golf. I lived in Arizona. Golf is an essential business there. It is insane the amount of people you will run into that are just coming from the golf course, going to the golf course, or thinking about the golf course. So I can understand where they're coming from there, especially in some of the rural, like right outside the city. There's not that many people. It's a great place. I loved it. I lived there for 6 months right outside of Phoenix. But I can understand why Arizona decided to keep their golf courses open, because that's really all there is there. It was wonderful, but that's really all there is there.
And if there was ever a sport to actually practice social distancing throughout a pandemic, it was golf. Honestly, there were people that kind of thought golf shouldn't have ever been, taken off in the first place. And of course, everybody's sort of come around to that in terms of them suspending the PGA Tour. But I mean, listen, you can literally stand 6 feet away from somebody for the entire 18 holes if you really want to. So It is primed to come back. As you know, it's coming back. We have the Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady thing. But then we also, of course, we have like real PGA golf coming out in June. And then, we can talk about it, maybe this episode or another one. But, Major League Baseball looks like they're gearing up for July 1st. Which I'm sure you're super excited about. And the NBA is trying to figure some stuff out too. So I'm super excited.
The NBA, just to touch on that, the NBA, Larry Nance is the first player, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that came out today and was like, hey, I'm just going to go practice. Like, it's an open gym and I need to do something. So he's going to go there. And kudos to him, considering the Cavaliers are nowhere near making the playoffs. So we'll see what happens to him there. But hey, it's something to do, I guess. Maybe the gym's going to be super empty because no one's going to want to be there because they're probably not going to be playing the rest of the season anyway. So we will see. Good luck to them. But I think it's about that time, Sia. I think it's about that time. Let's talk a little bit about the NFL schedule. So it was released at 8 o'clock, so only about an hour ago as of right now. We got the list of the Monday night games. We got the list of the Sunday night games. Week 1, the betting lines are already out, which is fantastic. So where do you want to start with this, Sia?
So, the first thing I looked at, because I know in terms of teams that are just going to pop off to people in terms of, hey, what's their schedule? I feel like the Buccaneers is the schedule everybody wants to look at because, you either have, you're either high on, Tampa Bay or you're really low on Tampa Bay. There's really not a lot of middle ground there. So, I mean, I'm looking at their schedule right now and they're at the Saints on week 1. Like, listen, they're not even going to get the benefit of a full training camp in all likelihood. They're not going to get a benefit of a full preseason in all likelihood. So you've got a new quarterback, some new tools on offense, and you have to face the Saints in New Orleans. Like that could be that is literally like the worst possible start for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, just from a 1-game standpoint.
And so here's the fun part and why Vegas agrees with you. What do you think that betting line is for the Bucs versus Saints in the Superdome?
So it's in the Superdome, but the Bucs are obviously going to get some public love too. So it's interesting because I think they're going to take some money, and I think the line that you're looking at that I'm not looking at is going to anticipate that. So I would probably say it could be as high as 4.5, but if it's any higher than that, I'd be surprised.
6.5 to the Saints.
Whoa!
Via Caesar's Palace. So yeah, I think take it while it's hot if you want it. If you're feeling one way of those lines, it's going to come down. I agree with you. The public is going to do what the public does, and they're going to ride Tom Brady like they have. But I don't know, man. I wouldn't be surprised if the Saints just blow them out. I really wouldn't.
I wouldn't be
early in the year. Sean Payton, I just can't see him. I mean, I don't know. 6.5 is a lot, but still.
6.5 is a lot for a good team, and we'll see how good they are week 1. But one thing to consider, and this is what I'm going to consider when I look at all these lines, and Michael, I think both you and I are going to be on SiriusXM this weekend, the Fantasy Sports Channel, and this is something I'm going to definitely want to discuss when we're on Saturday and Sunday. But, without practice time or without sufficient practice time with respect to training camp and preseason, the error is going to be on the offense. The errors are going to be on the offense. Like they're not going to be up to speed. Like, as it's much easier for a defense to sort of acclimate themselves to new surroundings, to a lack of practice versus the offense. So when you have a line of 6.5 and there's two good teams, if you're not taking if you're not taking the plus 6.5, I just feel like you're not understanding what's going on. If that line adjusts down to 4.5 or 4, especially 4, it's a different conversation. But with the defenses probably dominating in the first couple of weeks, I'll take 6.5 all day to a team that I think is going to win 9 or 10 games.
Yeah, it's a weird line, especially. I mean, I just got the Bleacher Report notifications coming from Caesar Palace, so obviously a pretty reputable source, and I did think that was a little high. That just is a little darn too high for me. So it is what it is. But we'll keep it rocking and rolling, man. Do you are there any other games on the Bucs schedule in particular that you're looking at that?
Yeah, so I'm looking at it now. So week 2, they're home against the Panthers. I mean, that's just going to be an absolute blowout. I mean, I think it is because at this point, I think Tom Brady and everybody will sort of be in a groove. Don't forget they've got Gronkowski there too. So I actually forgot that as I was just talking about the Bucs. The game I want to talk about though, they're at the Broncos week 3 on September 27th. I like you might have heard me on Sirius. I like the Broncos over total of 7.5. I really like what they've done with their offense. Their team, I believe, last year won 4 out of their last 5 games. Drew Lock looks like a quarterback that nobody expected him to be. I mean, he seems to have all the tools and he seems to have all the confidence that you'd want in a young quarterback. So the reason I bring that game up, they have to go to Denver. Again, by week 3, the offenses will be acclimated, but not as much as the defenses. I'm looking for an upset special. I like Denver in that game at home against the Buccaneers. I think Denver takes it, and I think the line is going to certainly favor the Bucs, but I'm looking for an upset special there.
Yeah, and in that case, you get a couple extra points to play with just in case, because I agree with you. I do think the Bucs are obviously going to be favored in that game, especially because it's so early in the year. I wouldn't be surprised if the Broncos are one of those surprise teams, as you said, what they did with their offense in the draft in particular, their first 2 picks being Jerry Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb. So I'm very excited. Next week, we're going to have Nick on, and he's going to be able to talk a little bit more to the fantasy aspects as well, now, sort of this season long too.
You got your receivers confused though, because CeeDee Lamb's with the Cowboys.
Oh my goodness.
That second receiver wasn't Jalen Reagor, but it was AJ Hamler. That's right.
KJ Hamler. I apologize, everybody. Please, cheers to me. Sorry, guys.
But yeah, Hamler, Judy, you
Mhm.
have obviously, the receiver. I feel bad for Deshaun Hamilton because I think he's going to go by the wayside. But Cortland Sutton is there. I mean,
Yep.
they've kind of got it all on offense. They've got Noah Fant, of course, and then they brought in Melvin Gordon, and they still have Philip
Yeah.
Lindsay, who is constantly disrespected. But
Mhm.
just those guys that I said, with if Drew Lock is just even average, that team is going to hit their 7.5 win total. Excuse me, they're going to hit their 8 to cover their 7.5 win total. So
I'm crossing my
yeah, I like
fingers
that
for
one.
you, man. And hopefully you put more than $10 down on that pick. How's that sound? How's that sound? Are there any
Smart.
other, again, I love talking about the Bucks here. Are there any other these games that you're looking at? It's a weird schedule. They have the Packers, they have the Vikings, both at home, opposite ends of the season. Finish with the Falcons, then the Lions, then the Falcons in 3 games. But also Kansas City Chiefs, Buccaneers, November 29th. That's going to be a fun one. How do you, I
Wow.
mean, that's kind of far down the road, so I don't think we can speculate too much about it. But as a whole, how did what is the over under total for the Bucks this year? I apologize. Is it 9.5?
It is 9. Yeah.
Okay.
No, excuse me. It's 10. The over
Whoa.
under with the Buccaneers is 10. And actually, the juice is to the over in a lot of places. So, again, this is public money. They see Tom Brady. They see what Godwin and Evans did. They hear about Gronk. All of a sudden, obviously the public's going to be all over that. We internally at Win Daily, we've had our arguments with respect to, that over. I'm not touching that over personally. But I do think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to make the playoffs. I think they're going to sneak in. But I don't think they're hitting their win total of 10 or 10.5, whatever it ends up being.
I wouldn't be surprised if they do end up 9-7. We do have that extra playoff spot this year, and then next year is when we get the extra game. So I'm excited to see what happens. More from a storyline perspective, I really hope the Patriots suck. I mean, that is just something that I am crossing my fingers for. So do you have the Patriots schedule in front of you? Because I think that's what they call in the biz a segue.
Yeah, I have it in front of me. You know what's interesting about the Patriots is their win total is 10. I don't understand how their win total, and by the way, I'm not dubious about their win total because of the Bills and the Jets and the Dolphins. Like, I'm not
Mhm.
really scared of any of those teams. You know how I feel about the Bills. I mean, I think their win total is going under for sure. That's probably my safest bet of the year is Bills under 9, because your worst case is a push there. And I think they're probably going to win 7 or 8 games. Major regression for that team. The problem with the Patriots winning 10 games, they play the NFC West and the AFC West out of conference. So, I mean, let's just think about the teams in those divisions. I mean, yeah, you might pound on the Raiders and maybe the Chargers a little bit, but those other 6 teams are all very good. I mean, you can make arguments about Arizona and the Rams in terms of whether they're good or not, but
Yeah.
the other 4 teams are really good teams. And you're rolling out Stidham and basically no receivers and some sort of like what most people would think are sort of like washed up ish running backs.
Mhm.
And you're going to win 10 games. Like, I can you explain that? I don't understand where that's coming from.
It's the Bill Belichick effect. It's
Yeah.
literally the only thing I can think of. I mean, he's smarter than all of us put together when it comes to football. So, I mean, if he thinks he can win with Stidham, did anyone actually think he could win with Brady when Brady came in for Bledsoe and Bledsoe was healthy and everyone's like, well, you got to put Bledsoe back in, right? And he's like, no, it's cool. I'm good. I'm just going to go win 6 Super Bowls. Sorry, guys, go to 9. So it's one of those things where sometimes we might look at something and think that's ridiculous and he sees something else. And again, I don't think, it would be funny if Tom Brady does go to the Buccaneers and it's just completely washed up and everyone's like, oh my goodness, it wasn't the receivers. Watch Jarrett Stidham come out, throw for 3,500 yards this year, have a nice 20-something touchdown total, something like that. But I don't know, man. It's weird. It's uncomfortable, but I'm not going to touch that one just as you're not going to touch the Buccaneers. It's just, I can't handle it.
Let me ask you this. So I'm looking at this printout. It's a grid of the schedule. And this seems to indicate that New England plays Pittsburgh week 1. But I thought I heard it was that they were playing the Dolphins week 1. Can you tell me by looking at the lines?
I have the Dolphins here on my computer and yes, Dolphins, Pats.
Yep.
Pats favored by 5.5 that first week. They also have the Seahawks on the road second week in Seattle. 8:20. That's looks like a Sunday night game, I'm assuming. I have a 9:20 off the top of my head. I don't know. Yeah, that's Sunday night. They have the Chiefs on the road. A couple weeks later, they have the 49ers at home. They have the Broncos at home. The Ravens, the Texans, the Cardinals. Yeah, I mean,
like, just stop right there. Like,
yeah.
I'm like for the first time in my life, I'm actually feeling sad for the Patriots. Like,
no,
those
stop
teams, I know. So what you're telling me is not only do they have to play the NFC West and the AFC West, but it sounds to me like based on what you just said, that their two extra games because of strength of schedule issues are against really badass teams. Like Houston would be one of them, and I believe the Ravens would be the other one.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean that's borderline unfair.
Ravens are at home, but Houston is on the road and they're in back-to-back weeks. Ravens being a Sunday night game, it looks like 8:20. So I don't know, man. At 10 seems a little too damn high, if you ask me.
Let me ask you this, because this is really important when it comes to sports betting. We'll talk about this, this weekend. We'll talk about it with Nick for sure. The second and third game, and again, this schedule's off, so I'm going to defer to you. The second and third game, did you say we're at Seattle and at Kansas City?
No. So at Seattle was the second game. Home against the Raiders is the third, and the fourth game is at Kansas City.
Okay, so here's the good news. Social distancing is going to be a real thing at the very least for the first 8 weeks of this season, maybe the entire season, maybe through the Super Bowl. We don't know. There's no home field advantage in Seattle anymore, and there's no home field advantage in Kansas City anymore, at least with respect to week 2 and week 4. We know that for a fact. Those screaming, they can't pump in noise. That's not allowed. Thank you, Atlanta, for solving that riddle. And then, so that 12th man, like Jared Stidham, that's a gift for him. If you're going to have hard games away, those hard games better be during social distancing time. He's going to be able to hear the snap count. Like, this is an absolute gift for the Patriots. They'll still probably, honestly, I think they'll probably lose both of those games, but that is an absolute gift.
I completely agree. But if you were to bet, which of those teams screws up and still pumps in crowd noise?
Of those two teams, it would be Seattle.
I would say Seattle as well. I feel like someone's going to, lots of stuff is legal out in Washington. Someone's going to click a button by mistake. So that's the Patriots. We talked about the Bucs a little bit. Who else is on your list of teams that you'd want to check out and see what their schedule is looking like this year?
So I know you're itching to check the New York Football Giants, but I'll tell you, before we even get there, I'm really interested about the Green Bay Packers, because that dynamic, I think, could go really off the rails if Green Bay has a bad start to their season, particularly with that Jordan Love pick. So why don't you tell me the first 4 games for the Green Bay Packers?
Away in Minnesota, home against the Lions, away against the Saints, home against the Falcons. So I could easily see them starting 2-2. I could easily see them starting 4-0. It's kind of a weird start to the season.
Yeah, interesting. What did you say the first game was?
It was the Vikings away.
Okay.
In Minnesota.
Away. So that's a tough game. Right off the bat, that's a tough game. I don't, The Packers won a lot of games just from a pure statistical standpoint. The Packers actually weren't very good, and their record did not match their offensive and defensive stats. And honestly, I think Matt LaFleur is more of a handicap than he is a help to this team, not just in the draft room, but honestly, last year, there wasn't anything special that was going on with that offense. It was really just Aaron Jones running through some open holes and really just knocking some wins out. But I'm actually a little worried about Green Bay this year. I could very easily see them missing the playoffs after an impressive record last year. Not helping the offense or the defense in terms of starters this year in the draft is a very big deal, especially for a team that really didn't justify its record last year. So that one, I'm really interested in the Packers. I actually think the Vikings are a nice little sleeper in that division. I think the Bears are going to be pretty terrible, and I think the Lions. I could see the Bears being the doormat of that division. I think the Lions are going to win more games than people think.
Okay, than people think. I thought you were going to say the Bears. I do think the Bears defense is still insane. You still have Khalil Mack. You're able to put Robert Quinn on the other side of him. While it's for a ridiculous amount of money, in my opinion, I want the man to get paid. I want all the players to get paid. So good for him. But it was just, I don't know. It seemed like they paid him a little much. But if he can do what he did last year, being opposite DeMarcus Lawrence, and, we'll see what happens. He did pretty damn well last year. So we'll see what happens when he's opposite Khalil Mack. That's one of those fantasy picks. I'm in an IDP league, so I'm always paying attention to those edge rushers a little bit. But it's interesting. I think Nick Foles will remind everyone that he's still Nick Foles. I think that part's very important. I think Mitchell Trubisky, I think their goal is to not let him play a single game this year because they don't want the backlash. But we will see how it goes, man. We will see how it goes. And that's a good point on the Packers. If they start a little wonky, well, you know what? I'm going to take it out 4 more games for you. So they at Minnesota, home against the Lions, at the Saints, home against the Falcons, at the Bucks, at the Texans, home against the Vikings, at the 49ers. That is a brutal next 4 games. Bucks, Texans, Vikings, Niners. That is a brutal next 4 games.
And we know, I mean, listen, I like Aaron Rodgers. I think he's still a very effective. He's obviously not the same as he was, 10
No.
years ago, but I think he's a very effective quarterback. I think he requires an additional weapon on offense. Listen, it doesn't even have to be a second receiver. It could be a tight end. Like, he hasn't had any of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think if they start out, let's say they're 3-5, or let's say they're 4-4 and they're like just middling and not even in the playoff in terms of the top 7. I mean, the problem with Aaron Rodgers is his body language, and that relationship with LaFleur could degrade to such an extent that, knowing Aaron Rodgers, by week 6, those two could not even be talking to each other. And then all of a sudden, all the airwaves are talking about, trading Aaron Rodgers, which I honestly, I'm not trying to have a hot take here. I think that is a real possibility if this team is middling this year. I really do.
I completely disagree. That's ridiculous. You don't trade Aaron Rodgers. And what are you going to get for him? I've heard people, I was talking to my cousin and he was saying, well, maybe, a team like the Jags, they can throw you their first round pick, the Rams first round pick, and then your first round pick next year. So that's 3 first round picks. But who's actually, you're not going to trade 3 first round picks for a 37-year-old quarterback who has 2 years and like $80 million left on his deal. It just doesn't make sense. I think he's going to ride out his contract, or they're just going to cut him before the last year and just kind of see what happens.
Michael, are you ready? First of all, it's not going to be the Jaguars, because Aaron Rodgers will just come out and say, I'm not playing for the Jaguars, period. I don't know if he has a no trade clause or not. I don't know. But here's my hot take. Are you ready for it? Are you sitting down? You look like you're sitting down.
I am sitting down. So yeah, absolutely.
So the Green Bay Packers, they go through this season before the trade deadline. They're not looking so hot. That maybe a rash of injuries, not to Aaron Rodgers. Jimmy Garoppolo is middling, and there's your swap right there.
Get out of here.
Here's why. First of all, Jimmy Garoppolo is an average quarterback. He's not above average. He's not below average. He's just an average quarterback. So in terms of Kyle Shanahan getting rid of Jimmy Garoppolo, no big deal there. Kyle Shanahan knows he turned Matt Ryan into an MVP. And I understand, like, everybody thinks Matt Ryan is good, but I'm not one of those people. So he turned Matt Ryan into an MVP. So listen, he gets Aaron Rodgers, presumably, mostly because he wants to play for Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers. He gets Aaron Rodgers for another 3 to 5 years. Let's just be conservative, another 3 years. That gives him time to groom another quarterback. We know what Kyle Shanahan did with Robert Griffin III and the Washington Redskins. We know what he did with Matt Ryan and the Atlanta Falcons. And you think he doesn't have the confidence to groom a running back real quick in 3 years while Aaron Rodgers is in a sort of retirement mode? No, that could absolutely work.
You make sense. That's the frustrating part. I want to completely disagree. And the only reason I'm being a little bit nicer than maybe I would is because we saw seismic shifts and changes in the quarterback landscape this year that I honestly thought there was a 0.0% chance of happening. I thought there was no chance Tom Brady leaves the Patriots. It doesn't even make sense. I still don't believe it, and I won't believe it till I see him in the uniform. I don't know. I think it makes sense, but I also think that there's probably a little more involved. If there's picks, cap space, that kind of stuff. I don't know that off the top of my head. It's an interesting take, though, Sia. And I want to be angry at you. I want to tell you you're stupid and you're wrong, but I can't do that. You're just too damn good looking.
Thank you so much. Listen, if Brady in his 42-43 season can all of a sudden be a Super Bowl contender on another team, so can Aaron Rodgers. And frankly, exactly. Other people have sort of laid this ground, whether it be Brett Favre or Joe Montana, but this is not a foreign concept. And as crazy as we thought it was for Favre to ever leave the Packers, however many years ago that was, it happened. And not only did he leave the Packers, he went to another team after that, and honestly was pretty successful, if not for just a ridiculously bad throw when he was playing for Minnesota in the conference championship game. They go to the Super Bowl and maybe win it.
I think he threw that game. Brett Favre knows you don't run to your right and then throw the ball back across your body to the left on the other side of the field. He knows that. It makes no sense.
That statement that you just said is absolutely true, except for beginning it with Brett Favre. That is literally the only quarterback in the world that would actually try to make that throw. And it was a terrible throw. The timing of it was terrible. It just made no sense where they were on the field. It made no sense. I have a friend named Nick James, who is just a gigantic Minnesota Vikings fan. And every time it's a missed field goal or it's one of those Brett Favre passes, they are just a team destined for, failure when it matters, unfortunately.
Or they go to Philadelphia and just get romped. That was terrible. I hate the Eagles, and that was just something I did not enjoy watching. What was her name? What was that lady's name they had there? The 105-year-old lady. She's like, I can't wait. And they're like, no, they hated her. They threw batteries at her or whatever.
Speaking of Philadelphia, there's a lot of noise about, Philadelphia in the offseason enjoyed sort of that talk about, listen, that's the cream of the crop in the NFC East. But the Cowboys are starting to generate a lot of momentum, especially with their draft. I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, splash with CeeDee Lamb. But the next few rounds, they had really good picks. I thought CeeDee Lamb, we had the NFL draft live stream, Michael, with a few others. I thought CeeDee Lamb was a bad pick, not because I don't like CeeDee Lamb, but because I thought they had other needs. But they addressed most of those needs in the draft with like real guys.
Absolutely.
So I'd actually like to know what the Cowboys schedule looks like, at least on the front end, to see if they can generate the momentum they need.
Yeah, I have the Cowboys and the Eagles up, so we'll be able to talk about them a little bit. So the Cowboys are away at the Rams, 9-13, so it looks like that's the Sunday night game. Home against the Falcons, away against Seattle, and then home against the Browns, home against the Giants, home against the Cardinals. So I really wouldn't be surprised if they only lose one of those first 6 games, and then that 7th game's against the Redskins. So they could be looking pretty damn good to start out. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot you're a Redskins fan. Oh, Sam, I'm so sorry, my bad.
So listen, I am willing to bet, and I've obviously not seen the schedule. You've told me everything I know about the schedule, other than the Buccaneers, which I knew about. That's got to be the easiest first 7 weeks in the league. It has to be. Like literally, if I was handpicking the schedule for the Redskins, who I'm a fan of, I honestly, like, it would have to be at least 6 of the 7 teams you just mentioned. I mean, that is, or one of them was the Redskins. It would have to be like at least 5 of those. I mean, it's crazy. They literally could be 6-1 very easily.
That's
Seahawks, unbelievable.
We spoke about it. The Rams and the Cardinals, not really sure. The Rams have so much money and just a dead cap from trading away Brandon Cooks, trading and cutting Todd Gurley, that it's really difficult to build a team when 15-18% of your cap is literally tied up in players that don't play for you anymore. Very, very difficult to do that. So it's going to be interesting in LA. I don't know. I still think the Cowboys take that one home. Seahawks, I think, obviously is going to be a difficult game, having to go to the West Coast, play them there. But as you were talking about before, which was a really good point, if we're not allowed to have all of our fans in the stands, maybe you have to have 50% capacity or whatever, something like that. Not even maybe, that's a good point. Home field advantage really isn't going to be a thing, and it's going to be uncomfortable. I'll still watch every single game, don't get me wrong, but it's definitely going to be something.
I mean, when you're looking at win totals, so I was looking at win totals, not thinking of the pandemic, because 2 months ago when I was looking at win totals, because we knew what teams each team were playing, you assume that the pandemic is over by September, 2 months ago. Now we know that we're going to be dealing with it for indefinitely to some degree. Yeah. So when you consider win totals 2 months ago, you're thinking of home field advantage or lack of home field advantage. But honestly, there are some teams here that you should be like, to the extent you can, quote, rush to the window or to your sportsbook online or whatever it is. I mean, listen, the Cowboys win total is 9.5. And honestly, this number, I think, has creeped up to 10 perhaps, which is a little finicky because the Eagles win total is very high too. So, but they're 22-1 to win the Super Bowl. I know the NFC is really tough, but honestly, knowing what those first 7 games are and knowing that they don't have they don't have a great home field advantage. So that's not a problem for them. But going to Seattle, well, that would have been a problem for them. Here's the big thing about the Cowboys that I think we all need to consider. So the schedule is amazing, obviously, but they don't have Jason Garrett anymore. Like, they have presumably a very real coach. And I'm sorry, you're the Giants fan, so I know Jason Garrett is over there, the clapper. And that is like one of the more curious hirings of all time. But the point is, with a real coach, with new offensive weapons, I mean, this team is kind of loaded, and they're in a perfect situation. I'm going to probably throw some money on that Cowboys Super Bowl pick and just hope I can start hedging it in the playoffs.
It can't hurt. I think they will make the playoffs. The NFC least, as many people like to call it. The Giants are still going to be bad. While they may have addressed a little bit of their offense, they didn't address their defense really at all. I mean, they brought in a couple free agents, but I don't think that's going to change the game there. So I think the Giants are still going to suck. Sorry, C. I think the Redskins are kind of going to suck too. And the Eagles are just weird. Carson Wentz you can almost pencil it in. He's going to miss a couple games with something, or he's going to be hurt, and their wide receivers are all going to, I don't know, do something that makes no sense, drive off a cliff. I don't know. It makes no sense to me how bad the Eagles are with all the talent that they've had the last few years. So I would agree with you. I think the Cowboys come out of that division. So I don't think it's a question if they make the playoffs. It's, what seed they are within the playoffs. But man, I just hate the Cowboys. Just a couple of the other games on the schedule. They do have obviously the Eagles a couple times. They have the Steelers, the Vikings. They do have the Ravens, the 49ers, and the Bengals, I guess. So, 2 losses and a win there in some capacity. So we'll see. I think the Cowboys have a very, very easy beginning of the schedule. It definitely starts to toughen up again that last half with the Steelers, the Vikings, the Ravens, and the 49ers along the way. So that first half is going to be pretty easy. Second half might be a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. But again, I think before, while I like the Eagles to win the NFC East, I'm starting to change my mind. And by the way, you mentioned Carson Wentz getting injured. So they play the Redskins week 1, and I think it's at Philadelphia. So the reason I think
it's in Washington.
It's in Washington. Okay, even better. Well, I guess, again, home field advantage. I mean, listen, there's no home field advantage for the Redskins these days in Washington. But here's the point. If Carson Wentz were to ever get injured, and this is not something I would ever root for, that defensive line for the Redskins is really good. So, you have Montez Sweat and Kerrigan and Chase Young. But then in the middle of that defensive line, you got the 2 Bama boys, Allen and Payne. Like, they are going to generate a ton of pressure. And Wentz is going to get, he better get that ball out of his hand quick, because if there's one thing the Redskins can do, it's going to be rush the passer this year. And their defense is going to be a lot more highlight filmish than people think, for sure.
I'm rooting for it, except for 2 games out of the year. The only team the Giants can beat in the NFC East is the Redskins. So hopefully we can keep it like that. So as you bring that up, the line for the Eagles at the Redskins, 6.5 to the Eagles. Again, seems like a big number, but the Redskins were terrible last year, so it's not too surprising.
Yeah, I like the Redskins there quite a bit. I think the appropriate line there is probably 4. You said 6.5. That's just too many. Yeah, that's too many points. I think the Redskins are going to have a pretty conservative game plan. They're going to try to sort of milk the clock a little bit, keep Haskins sort of at bay. They don't want Haskins to have to make a tough throw. So I think that's going to be
You mean Kyle Allen, right?
I wish it were Kyle Allen, but no, they're going to roll out Haskins. If Dan Snyder has anything to say about it, Haskins is going to be the guy, at least for the first 4 to 6 to 8 weeks. They're going to really just test him out, and then they're going to bring in Cam Newton.
Oh, that's interesting.
No, can I tell you, first of all, I want to get to the Giants. Can I tell you where I think
I could not care less about the Giants here? They're going to suck this year. Keep going. You're good.
No, the only reason is because I wanted to rag on the Giants. But listen, you're right. We can skip that. Nobody cares about the Giants, obviously. Listen, I think Cam Newton is going to end up with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think it's either going to be after a Ben Roethlisberger tweak of something, or just, listen, they don't like what Mason Rudolph is still going to be their backup. I mean, does that make any sense after what we saw last year? I don't think Cam Newton, I understand he's probably not going to be the best sort of locker room guy, because what I mean by that is I think a lot of the locker room guys will actually align with Cam Newton on some teams, but I don't think that'll happen in Pittsburgh because Ben just has too much clout. I think Cam would actually respect that clout. And I think Mike Tomlin is the type of guy that can really say to Cam, hey, listen, Ben's on a short leash here in terms of time or potential of injury. You're going to get in here, sooner rather than later. Just be a good guy. We're going to make it far this year. And, this is the role you have to play short term. I really think that's the perfect situation for Cam Newton.
I think Cam Newton's done. He can't throw the ball. He's been pretty much just been injured for the last 2 straight years. And the last game I remember him throwing the ball against the Saints 2 years ago in that really late season game, week 14 or something, he couldn't throw the ball. And then he still had shoulder problems. And then he had a foot problem. It's just one of those things, like, he's taken such a beating because he runs the ball and the way he runs and his style. He was incredible, man. Don't get me wrong. I would never take anything away from him. He was amazing. I just don't think he has anything left. So I think, go to the Steelers. I mean, here's the thing. The Steelers won 8 games last year with pretty much a net negative at quarterback. What other team can do that in the NFL? What other team says, all right, your quarterback is actually going to be worse. He's actually not going to help you. Not only is he not going to help you, he's actually going to make you worse. Go out and win 8 games. How many teams in the NFL can do that?
They almost made the playoffs. It's unbelievable.
Exactly.
But listen, back to Cam, though, if there was a place for him to succeed, because I kind of agree with you. If there was a place for him to succeed, it would be in Pittsburgh. 100%. Trying to stand tall in the pocket. He's got Juju. He's got Deontay Johnson. He's got a plethora of receivers. I think they drafted one this year as well. Am I right? No, I'm trying to remember who they drafted this year. But no, they've got a ton of weapons. They got Anthony McFarland at running back to help out with James Conner, and he's kind of a beast, by the way. Talk about under the radar. So they've got plenty of weapons, and I just think he would actually be successful there. So it's sort of a hot take, but that's where I'm going with Cam.
No, I like it, and it's a good point. And again, that's kind of my point. While I don't think Cam's not I don't think he's good anymore. I think he's going to be better than Mason Rudolph plus Duck Hodges for 16 games or whatever it was, 14 games. So again, like maybe that's the one game they win. If they were 9-7, I think they make the playoffs. Last year with their record, they would have been in the playoffs with the 17 schedule or the 17 playoff format. So, I mean, why not, get those competent backups in there and, see what the heck happens. You never know, man. You just never know.
So they did draft a receiver, and he's really
Mhm.
good in my opinion, but he was never really talked about in the elite class. It's Chase Claypool from Notre Dame.
Oh, yes, you're right. Yep.
The guy is gigantic. He's super fast. His wingspan is elite. His at the point of catch, he's really better than most guys that came out. So he's sort of a weird guy because he was a basketball
Mhm.
player first at Notre Dame, and then they weren't sure if he was a tight end or a wide receiver, which I think is just a perfect situation for him because if he can sort of play that sort of
Mhm.
mesh role of tight end and wide receiver, maybe be able to block, this guy could be a force. And I'm actually surprised he wasn't considered in that sort of top 4 or 5 receiver rankings when during the NFL draft.
Yeah, I agree, especially after his, I think he ran a 4.40, 4.4 something at the combine, and everyone was
Yep.
like, whoa, wait a second, what's going on here? So we'll see. I do agree he's kind of more that tweener, but right now I don't think that's a problem in the NFL. I think they can actually utilize that. If they can utilize it correctly, I think he can be a force to be reckoned with. So we'll see there. And also knowing that he was now a basketball player, we can put that down on our bingo board when we go into the season just to watch some of those games. How many times they bring that up? Might as well just put that at the free space right along with, did you know that Larry Fitzgerald was a ball boy for the Minnesota Vikings? Bet you never knew that.
You know what?
Bet
I
you never
did
knew.
know that because I think
Everybody knows that, Sia. That's the point. Everybody
Oh,
knows it.
damn.
Got you.
All right, bingo. You
Good
got
stuff.
me.
Yep, bingo. We got you. All right. So a little bit more. I guess we were still talking about the Eagles. We kind of jumped in the Steelers for a second. The Eagles schedule: Redskins, Rams, Bengals, 49ers, Steelers, Ravens. Ooh. Giants, Cowboys, Giants, Browns, Seahawks, Packers, Saints. Ooh, wow.
This is tough.
Cardinals, Cowboys. They end the season with the Redskins on 1-3, so a couple days after New Year's. But yeah, that's a pretty tough schedule.
It
That is
sounds
definitely a
like
tough schedule.
Yeah, it sounds like the Eagles and the Cowboys start out like relatively easy, and that's good. They can generate some momentum, but things get really hard for Philadelphia, harder than they do for the Cowboys, frankly.
Yeah.
So that makes my Cowboys thought even like a little bit stronger. I think if you're making a bet to win the NFC East, I don't see how you don't take the Cowboys at this point.
It's I would have to completely agree with you, but as we know, the Cowboys make no sense. So that's kind of the other side of that argument. Really don't have to go far there. So one thing I noticed is, we're talking about all these teams and all these teams we love. We haven't talked about the Super Bowl winning Chiefs yet. So I think that's probably a good place to go next. Let's talk about the Chiefs. As we know, one of the first things that was leaked is they do play the Texans on that Thursday night on the 10th, 9-10 in Kansas City, obviously. So that's the way we're going to open up the season. What amount of points do the Texans need to start the game to win?
So the reason you ask, of course, for those that sort of forgot how egregious of a failure that was for the Texans started out that playoff game last year 24-0. And do you recall, I think that the final score was it 51-31 Kansas City?
Yeah, they won by 20.
So Bill O'Brien managed to get outcoached 51-7 after a 24-0 lead. And by the way, we have to stop here just for a second because at some point we needed to do a show, not on the live stream, but like a podcast on the rise of Bill O'Brien because it makes no sense. It literally, he has not been successful anywhere. Now, don't get me wrong. The Texans have been pretty good. They seem to sort of always make the playoffs in spite of his failures. But that's a Deshaun Watson thing lately. Honestly, he wills them to.
Well, he was going
win.
to the playoffs with no quarterbacks too. Granted, his division is a complete joke. Andrew Luck was hurt half the time he was there. The Jaguars are the Jaguars, and the Titans suck. So he does make the playoffs, but it's not like he was making the playoffs with a competent roster or anything like that.
So listen, okay, let's get back to the question. The answer to your question, how many points do they need, is infinity. Because it's just, wow. it's not going to happen. Kansas City is absolutely winning that game. The interesting thing about the Texans, though, is that, and we'll get back to Kansas City in a second, but a lot of people think Indianapolis is on the rise, which maybe they are, but it's not because of Phillip Rivers, by the way. Tennessee had a good season last year, and then I guess you have Jacksonville in there. But I actually, even though I think Bill O'Brien is just, I don't have the words for him, I actually think the Texans are a decent play. This is a hot take. We'll get back to Kansas City in a second. To win the Super Bowl. Here's why. because they're 50-1 in some places.
Oh.
In some books, you can get them at 50-1. Now, in the AFC, what do we know? We know the Ravens and the Chiefs are awesome.
Mm-hmm.
We know that there's a couple teams that are behind them that are like pretty good, like Pittsburgh, but nobody fantastic. And we know that Deshaun Watson is one of the best quarterbacks in the league and that this is a quarterback-driven league. So if you're going to give me Deshaun Watson and a former playoff team at 50-1 in what is a watered-down AFC, at least relative to the NFC, I'm taking that every time. That is at least worth a $20 investment. And hey, let's just see if Deshaun Watson wills us to the AFC championship so we can hedge our bet. Let's hope that Kansas City somehow plays Baltimore in the divisional round because there's some sort of injury. I mean, listen, the AFC is not stacked. New England is not New England anymore. Like,
that's true.
Deshaun Watson can do this. And again, I don't think it's going to happen, but at 50-1, come on, that's an investment right there.
I hate how much sense you're making tonight. This is starting to get frustrating.
I'm sorry.
Like,
I'm very
it's
sorry.
a great point. I mean, just looking at it, really, who else is in the AFC? Just looking at a couple of these teams, the AFC North again, the Ravens, the Steelers might be solid. I think the Steelers make the playoffs, especially in an expanded version. The Colts and the Jaguars, no. The Chargers, no. Like, the Broncos, maybe. We talked about the over there. I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of sneak in, especially again with that 7th spot. But it's interesting, man. It is definitely interesting. So I will tell you this: the line is not infinity. But if you were to guess what that line was, what do you think it is?
So here's the thing. I don't know how much handicappers are compensating for the lack of home field advantage because of social distancing. And it sounds to me like because of the first few lines you just gave me, that they're really not compensating for it as much as they should.
I don't think so at all.
Therefore, I think there is sort of a built-in home field advantage there that may be a little bit inflated. And so I got to put that line. Man, that's interesting because everybody is so down on the Houston Texans. I can't believe I'm saying this, and I think it might be like crazy wrong. 10.5.
11. Good job.
No way.
Yep. 11.
Oh, I'm taking
Chiefs.
the Texans. I'm taking the Texans. Come on.
It's a lot.
I'm on all the dogs week 1. We'll talk to Nick later about this because his acumen here is great. But tell me what you think. That seems like too many points.
It does seem like too many points, but I saw a hysterical. Man, I need to look it up. As you were talking about before, with the Chiefs being favored in that NFC divisional round or the AFC divisional round, they win by 20. The Texans are up 24-0. So I want to say the Chiefs were favored by something like 6 or 7. So they literally were at plus 30 and still lost. And it's just insane how something like that is possible. And it is what it is. But I don't know, man. I think this early in the season, as you were saying, the social distancing, we'll see what happens with that. I understand everything you're saying, but I wouldn't be surprised if the NFL works some magic like they did it for that Super Bowl in the Meadowlands, and all of a sudden, instead of it being 30 degrees, now it's like 45 and sunny. So at least there's a little bit of sunshine there. So we'll see what happens. But it's definitely an interesting one. I do think the Chiefs take that one home, but we will see. The Chiefs. Now, here's the thing. This would have been a hard start to the schedule, but it's the Texans, then the Chargers, then the Ravens, then the Patriots. So the Patriots, while that used to be a pretty impressive game, I don't think that one's that impressive anymore. So of those first 4 games, I see them starting at a minimum 3-1. Like they'll either beat the Texans or the Ravens in some capacity. So I don't know. How do you feel about those first 4 games for the Chiefs?
I actually think the Chiefs are going to take a very small step back this year. Let me ask you: is Chris Jones under contract? Did they franchise tag Jones, or is he still holding out?
They franchise tagged him. That means he will play, but he'll probably just won't go to training camp. That's kind of been the theme the last few years. That he's just gonna not go to training camp and just kind of show up a little out of shape, which I don't really understand because you're trying to play to get paid. So very confusing concept to me. But hey, agents and players, they know a little bit more about football than I do, so I have to give them that.
Well, I'll tell you this: Chris Jones is gigantic for that team. And when he was out, I think it was at the front end of the play. He was actually out for that Texans game. And it's funny because I actually had a bet on Kansas City that ended up coming in, which is just so crazy. But I didn't realize, I thought that Chris Jones was suiting up for that game. And the moment I realized, and it was only like 30 minutes before kickoff, I was actually flying at the time. So I really wasn't at my computer like I normally am. And when I realized Chris Jones was actually not going to suit up, I got this sinking feeling in my stomach. I was like, oh no, this is bad. And I don't think people really appreciate how good of a player he is and how much he generates for that defense. That defense isn't great. It's great because of Chris Jones to the extent it's great at all. So I think that's really important. I think they take a small step back. I like the Ravens to beat the Chiefs. I don't care where that game is. I don't know if you told me or not. I think the Ravens are winning the AFC. I think the Ravens are winning the Super Bowl.
It's in Baltimore, and it looks like it's a Monday night game. So primetime, baby.
Wow.
Let's get it. It's going to be fun.
Week
Week
three, the
three.
two best teams in the league. That's actually pretty amazing.
I'm interested. I'm definitely interested. Looking at the rest of the schedule, not really too much to write home about. They play the Bucks, which will be cool, and the Saints towards the end of the year. But other than that, I mean, this schedule is not very difficult looking at all. So I understand maybe actually like play wise, they take a step back, but I wouldn't. I mean, as long as Patrick Mahomes doesn't get hurt, this looks like a 12-win team almost at a minimum, honestly.
Well, so they play the AFC East and the NFC South. So yeah, you have a couple good teams in the NFC South, of course, namely the Saints and the Buccaneers. But the AFC East, I mean, what are we really talking about here? We'll see what happens with the Patriots, but I'm sorry, but the Bills and the Jets and the Miami Dolphins, they don't match up well at all with that team. That's 3 wins banked. If everybody's healthy, that's 3 banked wins right there.
Exactly. Yeah, I totally agree, and I think it's definitely something that we'll be paying attention to. Nick will give us some of his picks. Hopefully Nick's watching, or he'll be listening to us, and we'll see what he says. So we went from the Super Bowl winners. Now we kind of have to go to the Super Bowl losers. One thing about losing the Super Bowl is it's kind of hard to get back. And the one thing I will say, when the Rams lost the Super Bowl a couple years ago, so the Patriots lose the Super Bowl a few years ago, obviously they get back. The Rams lose the Super Bowl, and then their team just gets decimated. Everybody leaves, then half of them get injured, and then they're not capable at really playing anymore, and they don't even make the playoffs, which is more the trend than actually making it back. I would say, though, the 49ers, still a stacked roster. They lost DeForest Buckner. They traded him away, and they utilized that to grab a first-round pick. They actually took a wide receiver, which is kind of nice in the first round. So, I don't know, man. I think the 49ers, I think they make the playoffs, but do you think they actually can make it back to the Super Bowl?
Yes. The problem is the NFC is so stacked. I mean, in my opinion, I know this sounds ridiculous. I think there's 7 or 8 teams that legitimately have a shot to actually make the Super Bowl. Where, again, we talked about the AFC. I really think there's probably only 3 or maybe 4, if you really want to make an argument, 4 teams that you could say, oh, yeah, I could totally see that. Of course, there could be an outlier there that happens all the time. But no, I don't like, my money's not going to be on them getting back to the Super Bowl. I will tell you this, though. I think Kyle Shanahan, if we leave Bill Belichick out of the conversation for a second, because he's sort of like God-ish, I think Kyle Shanahan is arguably the best coach in the league. And I know he's blown some leads in the Super Bowl, and that's kind of on him. But if you want to categorize as a guy as a bad coach for 4 minutes or 7 minutes, and you want to disregard the other however many minutes, or 16 and a half, or like 20 and a half games in a season, that's on you. But I if anybody can do it, it's Kyle Shanahan. And they did have a problem in the middle of the year last year because their defense was hurt. If their defense can stay healthy and Garoppolo can be just slightly above average with what they have done with their offense and what they can do with Kyle Shanahan, of course they could get back there. Is my money on it? Absolutely not.
I think I completely agree with you. As Jimmy Garoppolo, don't lose me games, win me a couple. Maybe you can lose a couple along the way. I think it's fine. I think, again, their defense is still stacked. I mean, they literally traded their starting running back last year because Kyle Shanahan does not give a shit about running backs. They got a 5th-round draft pick for Matt Breida, if I'm not mistaken. They did not care at all. Right. They brought in another wide receiver that's not exactly like all the wide receivers they have that just run straight lines and run fast. So that's kind of nice. So we'll see, man. I don't really care about the Niners, I guess. We'll see. I think I said that on the live stream, and some other people got angry at it for, they're just not one of those teams that I pay too much attention to. So we'll see. Lost the last 2 Super Bowls they were in. And one thing I will say to your point, Kyle Shanahan, and, if he out in 4 minutes, I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo makes one throw, they win the game, and all that narrative is written away. And you know what we're talking about? Andy Reid just can't win the big one. Is Andy Reid that really good of a coach? That's the thing. It's just crazy how in the NFL, it's just such snap decisions, and all of it comes down to a couple plays here and there. It's just ridiculous. I mean, look at the Patriots. They could be 9-0 in Super Bowls, and there's a legitimate argument that they could be 0-9 in Super Bowls. It's insane, and sometimes that's just the way it works.
So, and you do so many, Michael, you do so many podcasts. And if you haven't already done a show on just how fickle people can be about narratives, it's really crazy. You're right. So if Jimmy Garoppolo on that one throw. I don't know if you were referring to a specific throw,
The
but he had
Emmanuel
Kittle.
Sanders, where he overthrows Emmanuel Sanders.
Well, before that, he had George Kittle wide open, and he was too scared to go to his second read, and he just basically threw it in the dirt. And if they get a first down on that play, it's an easy throw. He's literally wide open, about 7 yards in front of Jimmy Garoppolo. He makes that throw. They get a first down. They can wind the clock down. The game is absolutely over. So I mean, yeah, you could talk about the Emmanuel Sanders thing all you want, but that the 7-yard throw was really why they lost the Super Bowl. It's just missing Emmanuel Sanders, like Josh Allen misses all of his receivers. That's obviously the one that you're going to remember more than the other ones.
Poor Josh Allen. You had to throw that in there, man. I know you're not the biggest fan, but he's so tall. His arm's so strong. Why do you have to be like that? Why do you have to be like that?
He's handsome too.
He's
got moxie.
But he's not as handsome as you see, and I think that's what the most important part of this conversation is. He's a great running back. We got to give him that.
Thank you. Hey, by the way, speaking of narratives, you realize if the Houston Astros hadn't cheated their way to all the wins that they did, that Clayton Kershaw would be thought of as like not only a World Series champion, but one of the better pitchers of his time. But instead, notwithstanding that everybody knows that Houston cheated against him, instead, he will always go down in the books as a guy who choked. Now, granted, there were a couple times you could argue that he choked. But all he has to do is win one World Series, which he would have if Houston hadn't cheated. And all of a sudden, that narrative has completely shifted. I'm sorry I'm changing the subject, but it's ridiculous how we can't think through these things.
It's I don't want to have this conversation right now, but I agree with you. I'm the biggest Clayton Kershaw apologist on planet Earth. So believe me, I'm on your side. I love him. What he did for 7 years, just being just absolutely dominant, is one thing. But we have to talk about the NFL because we're going to go on a tangent, and you don't want to be. I don't want to be on here for another hour. No offense or anything, and I don't think you do
I hear you.
But at the same time, so I do want to go over the 49ers schedule. Then I'd like to just touch upon week 1 a little bit, and then we'll hop off here in a couple minutes. So the 49ers, Cardinals, Jets, Giants, my goodness, Eagles, and then the Dolphins and Rams, and then the Patriots. I mean, that's one loss maybe in the first 7 games.
Yeah, it's nice. That's real nice.
Right? Like the Eagles, maybe, but it's in San Francisco. Looks like a Sunday night game. The Rams, maybe, but the last time the Rams played the 49ers in San Francisco, I think Jared Goff got sacked like a legitimate 11 times. So we'll see what happens there. They have then the Seahawks, the Packers, the Saints. Okay, here we go. The Rams, the Bills, the Redskins, the Cowboys, the Cardinals, and the Seahawks to end it. Thank you, NFL. That's going to be an awesome game to end the season. Those seasons with potentially coming down to the title for the NFC West. I apologize. How do you feel about this schedule? I mean, there's that weird run in the middle: Seahawks, Packers, Saints, Rams, and Bills. So I guess you can talk about Josh Allen some more if you want.
So listen, so even if they were to split those games that you're talking about, those hard games, because of what they have on the front end, they're pretty much a lock to make the playoffs unless there's some sort of crazy injury scenario. And frankly, in the NFC, there's going to be the NFC playoff picture is going to be very loaded. So it's really just a matter of qualifying for the playoffs in the NFC. And then it's sort of like all bets are off because there's probably only going to be like 1 or 2 teams that are sort of like, only moderately good. And everybody else is going to be just totally stacked. So the idea in the NFC is just make the playoffs and see what happens. Whereas in the AFC, you can sort of make the playoffs and then maybe coast a game or two until you have to face a real hard opponent.
I would agree with you there. It does not look like the 49ers are going to have too much difficult making it into the playoffs, but we will see about once they get there. So I do want to just pull up the week 1 schedule so we can talk about that a little bit because that will be fun. We've talked about a few of these games already, obviously, but Texans Chiefs to start us off. Bills Jets sounds like a week 1 game. Packers Vikings, that's going to be fun. Eagles Redskins, Browns Ravens. What do you think that the line is on the Browns Ravens game?
I don't care about the line because all I can picture right now is Odell Beckham on the sideline in the 3rd quarter, just having a complete freak out session with himself or with a field goal net because I don't think he has a ton of patience and I just could totally see Lamar Jackson just running over that team with the running game and the receivers he has. I'm sorry. I went off on a tangent. You asked me about what I think the line is and it's at Cleveland.
It is in Baltimore.
Yeah, so that line has got to be that's got to be 11.
10. You're getting pretty good at this, man. You should do this for a living. Damn, look at you. So what else do we have? So we have Colts, Jags, whatever. Ravens, Panthers. That's a really weird. Raiders, Panthers. I apologize. Bears, Lions, Seahawks, Falcons, Dolphins, Patriots. Let's just see because that might be interesting. I'm curious. Did we talk about that already? How much the
No,
Patriots are favored by?
no, we didn't talk about the line, I don't think. No.
5.5 to the Patriots. It's in Foxborough, so I guess that kind of makes sense. But that's
Absolutely.
I mean, I'd still take the Patriots over the Dolphins. I do think the Dolphins did a lot this offseason, and I think the Patriots just lost a bunch of players. I don't really think they did anything to replenish, and I'd still take the Patriots over the Dolphins. I don't really think that's a question.
So I have a hot take with some of the guys at Win Daily, and
Damn it. This is going to make sense, isn't it?
It is. Well, no, I don't think it will actually, because I'm not even going to bother explaining it. I'm just going to give you my hot take and I'm going to be out. So
Okay.
2021, the Miami Dolphins win the AFC East.
Okay. We write that one down. Anybody listening, make sure to write that one down. Sia thinks the Dolphins win. Can we bet on that yet? I guess we'll have to ask Nick when he comes on if we can bet on.
We can't.
Okay.
We can't.
Rats.
Yeah.
Well, there has to
Sorry.
be a line somewhere, don't you think? Come on.
I just bet on Outlaw Golf. There's no there, and I won. There's no line.
Get out of here. If you're betting on Outlaw Golf, Sia, there has to be a line somewhere. Get the heck out of here. A couple other games: Seahawks, Falcons. That's a 1:00 game in Atlanta, so you can pencil in Seahawks for a loss most likely there. Bengals, Chargers, weird game. 49ers, Cardinals, Bucs, Saints. Again, that's going to be fun. Cowboys, Rams, that should be fun. Sunday night game. Looks like it is going to be, or no, I apologize. There's 2 Monday night games. I forgot. So the Giants, Steelers in the first Monday night game. That is the only other game that I think could draw more ratings would be Giants, probably Cowboys. So the NFL is let ESPN get something, which was kind of nice of them. What do you think the line to the Steelers Giants game is?
Again, we're factoring in home field advantage, and we probably shouldn't.
Do
but
the Giants have a home field advantage?
Oh, it's in New York. Excuse me.
Sorry.
Oh,
No,
point.
my apologies. I guess I did not say that. Yeah. Giants, Steelers at Giants.
So I gotta say Steelers 4.5.
3. You're getting you did better at the other ones. I'll give you that. And then the late Monday night game, which should be the Chris Berman, Trent Dilfer special, but unfortunately neither of them I think are going to be on the call there, considering Titans Broncos. Very weird game, and yeah, I think it makes sense that nobody's going to watch it anyway. So that's going to be fun.
Mile High.
It is, yes, correct.
Oh, wow. Okay, I already know I'm taking the Broncos in this game, no matter what the line is. I would imagine, Tennessee's coming off a playoff run. I still think the Broncos are probably favored by 1.5.
3.
Oh, wow, it's that high.
Yeah,
interesting.
surprisingly.
All right, the Broncos are getting respect. That's very interesting. All right,
we'll see. We'll definitely see. But this was a lot of fun, Sia. This was our second one. We plan on doing many, many more. Obviously, thank you to everyone that watched. Thank you to everyone that will be listening. This will now be released in podcast form tonight, and so you can listen to it tomorrow morning. Doing this more often, we're excited. In the near future, we're going to have on some of our other Win Daily friends, as we had on Jason this past week already. We're going to bring on Nick. I don't even know. Jason's butchered his name so many times. I honestly don't even know how to say his last name at this time. So I just call him Nick Sticks. Nick's Picks, Sticks, whatever the hell his name is. He's going to be coming on talking NFL schedule, some of the team total over-unders, what he likes, some of the fantasy plays that he's excited for in the season long. He might even come on to talk a little more Korean baseball and maybe some bat flips with me. So we'll see what happens there. Excited to get on some people for UFC. I know we didn't get to talk about it tonight. Kind of a little bit of a scheduling mishap, but we'll get to try and do that next week because there's a few different matchups coming up in the UFC in a very short period of time. So we're excited to get some of that to you guys. And yeah, we're just here to have some fun. We're here to spread some wisdom, spread some knowledge, spread some positivity. I even forgot, we're going to have JT on. We're going to have Big Jim Thompson on. He's going to be talking a little bit about esports and the projection models that he created himself. So if anyone is interested, make sure to go check out the Discord chat, sign up for a free account, and you can hang out with Jim Thompson and learn a little bit about esports over there. You can talk to Nick, learn a little bit about NFL and see what we're doing on there. But I am Michael Raziel. Sia, really appreciate your time tonight, everybody, and I hope you make it a wonderful day.